Hi, local main character Zep here. Sorry, this is not professional, but she left me. She just called me up and said that I was being distant and that I wasn't being transparent, and that's the one that got me because I didn't want to make the same mistakes Redakai did.
I don't have to explain why this is bad, right? My first run-in with Redakai was on my 10th birthday, where I was very excited to get my hands on some shiny new collectible game pieces. You see, 10th birthdays were big in my family because it meant that we actually got to have some kind of big party. You see, we were poor. I got to invite 10 friends over, we built PVC pipe stomp rockets in the backyard, and I got exactly what I asked for. Some Redakai cards in this thing. Right here. And now, over a decade later, I realize this is where it all went wrong. When looking for a product to replace the waning Bakugan as its flagship boy action toy, Spin Master was in a rough spot. It was a best-selling, award-winning toy 4 years in a row, it innovated the Western hobby collectible and battle toy industry and revitalized Hobby Annie internationally in a way not seen since Bakuten's Shoot Beyblade at the time, and it saved Spin Master as a company. So their idea for a follow-up was looking at a lenticular moving picture backpack and saying, yeah, we can run with this. While it was only allegedly made as a replacement, Redakai entered the market in 2011 on the tails of Bakugan's last breath in the international market and taking its first real breath in Japan as Bakutech. Other similar series also dropped this year, hot to fill in the market niche created by Bakugan, like Monsuno and Dagadar. I mean, none of them stood a chance against the impending release of Skylanders, but it was cute that they thought they had one in the first place. Out of the Western Hobby Annie emulator wave of 2011, Redakai was the one with the most going for it. In theory, its accompanying animated show aired on common cable channel Cartoon Network instead of the much rarer Nicktoons like Monsuno did, making Redakai accessible to most cable users and not the maximum 7 viewers Nicktoons would ever have. On the game side of things, they had the designer Justin Gary, a man of some acclaim, who was in part behind Ascension, a popular and revolutionary deck-building game. They even got Brian Kibler on the design team, a man whose resume speaks for itself. He was a white guy who played Magic the Gathering professionally and then went on to game design, you can guess. The physical cards themselves had cross-compatibility with a whole suite of toys for the younger end of the audience, and to sate older fans, the game had hobby store support, including exclusive packs for LGS that contained rare cards not available in the retail version of the set. All that is to say, I sure don't remember Spin Master rebooting Redakai in 2019 to a mostly successful 5-ish year run. In fact, Redakai couldn't sustain any level of success, dying before 2 years of existence. So, why'd it flop? The ball to replace their balls was literally in Spin Master's court. Let's break it down. First things first, the show, the main advertising mechanism for the series, the 22-minute long commercial that they play so they can run 30-second commercials in between its breaks, and the main cultural touchstone that most people who interact with the series will have of the franchise, well, was not good. It wasn't unwatchably bad, but it wasn't watchably good either. The plot was a bland action-adventure go out and collect the MacGuffin because my father is missing type beat with no real groundbreaking characters or plot elements or entertaining elements at all whatsoever. A story with the same emotional impact as reading the Wikipedia summary for Beowulf. The kids would go out, turn into monsters, use attacks, and then scan more of both with their iPod-like devices. So, realistically speaking, it was chaotic with none of the charm or world building. Redakai, the animated series, was remarkably bland. So bland, I just only now realize that the alien teenagers that the good guys fought were called the E-Teens because it's a pun on E.T. It, like most Western hobby collectibles at the time, tried to ride the tailwind of anime success with a vaguely Japanese-sounding name, combining the English word red with the Japanese word for red. Look, I know that red is the color that makes toys magically sell, but surely we can do better than doubling down on it.
Your main mascot isn't even red, he's silver, come on. The recolor card doesn't count, he's not in the marketing when he's red. Your name is two lies, and it's the same lie. The faux anime appeal didn't end at the name, however. It also invaded every aspect of how the show looks, making the entire production look like a how-to-draw manga book where they sated off every point into a tiny square. It doesn't look good or appealing or iconic, it just looks like they had to baby-proof Goku and that one chick from Atlantis. And I know her name is Kitarakas, you don't need to at me. The only thing that they didn't try to steal from the anime boom was actually entertaining stories and endearing characters. It was a very episodic show, but so were a lot of good shows in the same exact genre. The big secret that they don't want you to know is that Monster of the Week isn't a boring format. That's a new monster every week. They should be able to make that engaging, but they didn't. They wrote this bit instead.
Just a little breakfast treat traditionally eaten on the planet Creekwam.
Sure you don't mean Planet Stink Bomb there, Mookie?
Chaotic, a very similar show with a very similar concept with a very similar structure and a very similar purpose, managed to blend the lore of the world, the general mechanics of the game, and the plights of the human characters into an engaging experience for anyone who was interested in any part of the franchise, while not pushing away any uninitiated folk. Redakai substitutes this balanced approach to storytelling with battles that have very little to them except beat up the bad guy until they go away. The rest of the elements of the show have that little going for them as well. But don't worry, it's not all that bad. We still have the toys, and according to the 2011 Kids' Choice Award, Best New Toy category, the toys ranked just below the paper wrapper that straws come in. To be fair, you can shoot those off the straw. What can you do with this? The obligatory toy line for the series isn't that interesting either. Whether it be action figures or the X-Reader themed microglyph animation unit, they mostly do one thing: animate the microglyph animations on the X-Drive cards. Yes, they almost exclusively refer to the trading cards as X-Drives. This is a branding choice that they made and is a branding choice that they stuck with. This is just the reality of our situation. No, there's no deeper meaning to them. This is just two cool sounding syllables. These 3-frame animations that you get from shining a light through these tiny little circles in the bottom of the card are neat, I guess, but uninvolved with the game as a whole and the card's already existing animations in the form of Blast 3D technology, also known as lenticular plastic, but polarized 3D was the new hotness at the time, so be forgiving. By putting alternating slits of different pictures through angled lenses to make one picture seem like it moves or changes, they introduced a brand new revolutionary element to trading card games. The same technology also found on Valentine's cards. The closest thing any of the toys have to gameplay compatibility is being card storage, wildly inefficient card storage. The cards themselves are also largely toyetic in nature. They can stack together to show damage and stat changes because they're partially transparent, forming the basic gameplay mechanic. I'm just saying, like most things, this was better when women did it. The concept of overlaying transparent film over each other to create different effects has been around as long as we've had tools as a species. Many cultures have done shadow plays with this exact concept, so it's been around for a while. But in more contemporary times, the most similar example I can think to Redakai's play pattern is Takara Tomi's Millefeuille cards.
Millefeuille.
Millefeuille cards. Why do they call it a romance language when it just makes me violent? These transparent sheets that you overlay are kind of like paper dolls, but instead of God's most delicate outfits, they're cards that will take 5,000 years to biodegrade, which in my opinion is a fair exchange to play dress up. They're usually associated with the Pretty series, not to be confused with the Cures, but actually have some uses that predate their association with that franchise. Millefeuille is French, meaning 1,000 layers, like the puff pastry. Blast 3D, on the other hand, is a term derived from crushing up 1,000 focus group test scores and snorting them off of your mom's hand mirror.
I've heard through the grapevine.
I'm the grapevine, and you shouldn't listen to me.
That Spin Master thought these plastic cards were so neat that when their would-be designers for the game, Gary Arendt and Justin Gary, brought up the fact that this would be kind of bad for a collectible trading card game in a conventional market, they swept away the twin Gary's criticism with the statement, quote, "That's what engineers are for." This is the exact same mindset that NASA program managers had about the O-rings in the Challenger. Now, the only thing that Redakai has over that is that it didn't kill 7 people on live television when it blew up in Spin Master's face.
Admittedly, Some of these cards do look cool. I just don't think that's enough to move units on the scale of Bakugan, whose gimmick was more immediately understandable and engaging, and not really needing a game to be a cool collection piece on its own. The cards in Redakai are also mainly attacks. Most successful collectible mediums have mostly characters to make up their flagship card type that the game revolves around. Those are marketable faces. When the bulk of your pack contents is filled with bangers like Ear Splitter, it becomes harder to create connections with the flagship characters who are absent from almost all of the artwork in the game. It's also hard to make an entertaining pack to open when all of your cards are transparent. Also, one time I was opening a pack that was supposed to have 6 cards, and it only had 5. I imagine that the sorting machines were having a goddamn time with cards ripped for her pleasure. Whether it be the weak emotional journey while opening these packs or the lack of characters in most of the game's artworks, there's not many ways that you can get attached to these cards. The whole genre of collectible MacGuffins is built on forging emotional connections to the character or character-adjacent motifs on all of the objects, whether that be through gameplay, artwork, or the actual acquisition of the objects. Organ Exploder and Boomer are not gonna cut it, and the gameplay isn't either. Before we even mention any rules, this game fails in a matter of form factor. The cards are made of transparent plastic, which creates a lot of distinct issues. This little business decision drove up booster pack prices to more than double their competitors. And no matter what, the profit margins on plastic are not going to match the profit margins on literal paper. This also causes the cards to have thick edges, and while they can be sleeved according to the official play documents, you would have to unsleeve them to place them on a character, so don't mix up cards with your opponent, you'll die. If you go the sleeves route, I hope you weren't attached to them because these cards ruin sleeves, and they need to be constantly sleeved and unsleeved during gameplay. They have hard edges and textured surfaces. Even if your sleeves survive, somehow circumventing splitting, they can still be easily creased and marked. Redakai will leave sleeves in the same state as Redakai, forgotten in a trash can. If you choose to forgo sleeves, it's a tough shuffle with those thick edges, and with their textured lenticular surface, they scratch each other so easily.
I mean, that's pretty bad, but, you know, what's a little worse is that these cards are transparent in a hidden information game. A type of game where the information has to be hidden, and it's not because the cards are completely see-through. There's no joke here, this is just the reality we're living in. This is incredibly funny to me because the official gameplay guides and FAQ tell you to cut and shuffle unsleeved decks without looking, presumably while maintaining unbroken eye contact with your opponent, gently guiding their hands to your deck as they do the same with you. You still looking in their eyes. They're deep. Their hands are warm. Your hands are warm. You're warm. You're... Okay, what was next?
Well, I need to buy proprietary products in order to hide my hand in the top of my deck properly. Well, poorly. They need another flap here to make it work. Plus, the card trays are nearly required to keep your stacks from sliding or toppling. This is a lot of money to spend and a lot of plastic to carry to play a basic game. Most TCGs just have the buy-in prices of a deck, dice, and sleeves, which all have off-the-shelf storage peripherals, and in the case of the dice and the sleeves, you can use those for most other games. If this were a well-designed, fun, high-end tabletop game, I could take this hit, but for a trading card game for children... You sure, man? The other officially sanctioned method of hiding your deck is to put a cut card on top of it to block your view. I mean, if this card moves a little bit, or I don't know, I look at the side of my deck, the whole concept is ruined. To the game's credit, the official website did have a forum, card database, deck builder, and FAQ. None of them lasted that long, but hey, they tried. At least they had a sealed format. Konami. Alright, enough yapping, let's make like a bottom and prep for play. We'll use 2 starter decks of 40-ish and some odd change cards. They both have more than 40, which is fine. 40 is only the minimum and not an exact maximum, so this is technically legal. I also bought 2 championship tins, which both contain a random selection of 43 cards. If you're lucky, it might be a playable deck. They also have an exclusive Kai character card and the peripherals to play the game. However, this one's Kairu tracker clips are both the same mold, unlike the other one, which works. So instead of both of them fitting into the groove on the back, this one just kinda sits here. Really good QC for this game. What a wildly necessary amount of plastic to play the card stacking minigame. Woo! Awesome! As for the gameplay itself, it's not magic, and that's about the kindest thing you can say about a game made by an American TCG designer. The gist is that you play attack cards onto your opponent's characters to fill in their damage zones and break their defenses. You can empower your own characters by playing monsters on them, which bolsters their defenses, heals damage, and unlocks new abilities. To hit with an attack, you must compare its power number to the targeted character's total defense in that color. None of the colors are marked with any symbol, so sorry to the colorblind. Haha, I love accessibility. I love accessibility in gaming. I love how present it is. If the attack power is higher, it hits and stacks onto that character. If it's lower, the attack is stopped and discarded. Add in the occasional card with the instant speed react effect to respond to attacks using leftover energy, and you have a game of whittling down your opponent's team until they're all defeated. There's 2 game modes, the basic game and the advanced game. The basic game can presumably be played with a single retail pack, not the game store packs as they only contain 6 cards, as a pack battle format, and ignores card effects, costs, and player input. Play with 1 character card and simply draw the top card of your at least 10 card asterisk deck and play it for no cost without any effect text. It's very simple and breaks down to have the strongest attacks and draw them faster. It's war with extra steps, but that's fine as a pack battle option. It's what they're there for. You can also play monsters in your deck, but if it's not dealing damage, then I don't think it's worth playing in this format. Note that you can lose by deck out in this version of the game, so you're encouraged to hit the deck maximum, whatever that number is. Some sources say 20, some sources say up to 40. It's your guess. Imagine playing a game with someone and they're going 20 cards over the deck limit and you accost them about this and they just respond, "Actually, I did my own research." The advanced game adds abilities back in, creates a team of 3 character cards, a hand of 3 cards to start off, and 3 resource points called Kairu. Draw 1, gain 1 max Kairu, and recharge spent Kairu to your max value at the start of each turn, including the first. There are many ways that this version of the game just ends up being the basic game with more steps entirely relying on top decking to win the game. They are: A. Getting cost stuck. If you draw cards that are too expensive to play, you are out of the game. However, this can happen in nearly all TCGs, and the ramp in this game sometimes just goes insane, so this is slightly forgivable. 2. Getting color stuck. If you draw cards all of one color and your opponent managed to randomly spec into that color of defense, you cannot play the game. 3rd, getting damage stuck. If you cannot draw the damage zones that you need to defeat or damage an opponent, you cannot play the game. Final bullet point. Getting draw stuck. If you manage to empty out your hand in the first 2 turns, which is entirely possible and easy to do, and run into any of the previous issues, you cannot play the game. There are so many choke points in this game where it leaves decision-making behind and relies entirely on the luck of the draw. By design, this game is supposed to become a stalling match between you and your opponent. By damaging your opponent, you make it harder to damage them further because you need the right zone, stalling the game. By playing monsters, you're supposed to bolster your defenses. But with the way that defense zones work, you're meant to make each other hard pivot into that defense type, hoping that eventually they lock themselves out of playing cards of that color, stalling the game. Every turn of this game encourages you to bottleneck your opponent by locking up their options and forcing them to play top deck turbo. There are ways to give yourself draw power, but I don't think it's enough. If the game, say, had you draw up to 4 cards each turn, similar to the mechanic from Rush Duels, then maybe it would be less of an issue, but the game really enables you to play all of your cards in your hand with minimum sequencing and thought, leaving you quickly out of any viable options. And the defense system only works if your opponent draws poorly. Most high-cost attacks, available pretty quickly due to the resource curve of this game, can clear a fully defensed-up character. If not, there are 1 to 3 cost cards that beat out most defense scores and block out defense zones. Even then, if you spec into one kind of defense on a monster, which you are kind of forced to do with how these cards are designed, all it takes is a player drawing a color that's not one a character is already spec'd in and auto-hitting. This is only also if you draw your monsters. My opinion on whether monsters should even be included in decks except for niche strategies is still up in the air. On one hand, some monsters have pretty cool effects and they can heal and they add to your defense. But if you run too many and don't draw into your attacks, then you are locked out of doing the single meaningful action in this game, damaging your opponents. Also, a lot of attacks can already beat over a lot of monsters and base characters' defense scores, even cards that you can play from the first turn in the game. Each defense type also only works on 1/3 of cards, so in the end, is it even worth it building them up? Some attack react effects can even raise your own defenses, so maybe those are more worth playing. But in the end, Super Rush aggro might be the way to play the game. The only other option is stall and hope your opponent decks out. And both options feel like gambling, trying to draw the right thing to fill the right slots on the right cards. It's not even like you can spec into a certain color to make your decks feel like they have an identity either. The colors don't even feel that different from each other in the first place. The 3 colors marginally have different effect types, like blue generally ramps and has a lot of the weird effects in the game, green recharges and benefits you when you play a lot of cards, and red adds attack power and benefits aggressive actions in the game. Many of the cards are also just vanillas. Due to just how the game works and how some card effects reference other card colors, the game really pushes you to run all 3 of them, and running a monocolor strategy could really clothesline you if the opponent happens to have high defenses in that color. There are some character-related archetypes, but generally speaking, every deck in this game is good stuff pile.
Redakai is an exercise in beating a stillborn horse. The gimmick of overlaying transparent cards as the main gameplay mechanic in a traditional TCG framework was just not going to work. Many games have failed to make this mechanic before Redakai, like Hecatomb from Wizards of the Coast, but many have made it work since, like flawed TCG's mechanic of overlaying transparent cards within the card sleeve so you don't have to take them in and out, constantly damaging the cards, and there's no, seeing through the hand. And the board game Canvas uses its transparent cards to create a layered painting, which you then score, which is really thematic and nice and works really well gameplay-wise and theme-wise. These games were created to play to the strengths of transparent cards and also their limitations. Redakai just shoved a lenticular transparent sheet into an opaque cardboard-shaped hole. What's funny is that the gameplay gimmick would work really well with Bakugan, a game that's already toyetic, has the buy-in of metal cards already, and has less of a need for hidden information in its gameplay. But no, put it into a category where big box stores and local game stores alike would have trouble selling it or moving product at all. Too simple for teens, too disjointed for kids, and too obtuse and expensive for its genre. Redakai used the wrong tool for the wrong job. I don't know, the whole ordeal feels like hiring a Yu-Gi-Oh player as an AP Lit teacher. Like, they can't read a card. What are they going to do with Pride and Prejudice? Overlay women for an Xyz summon? Spin Master failed in the only way they know how. Not listening to designers, not knowing the appeal of their toys, not understanding the market beyond the basic safe choices that keep them afloat and stagnating creatively. Well, I guess there's only one more metric to judge Redakai by. How good do the cards taste? Yeah, that's not good.